You're listening to Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong, all on Georgia Radio Network.
Welcome to episode 37 of the Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong podcast. With me, as always, is Matt Lowe.
What up?
The busiest person in Georgia politics, Jessica Szilagyi.
Hello.
How are you guys doing today?
Everything's great. Everything is great. The election is almost over. God willing.
Right.
But not libertarians willing, so maybe not, but...
you know, I hate to give that silver lining just a touch of gray, but the presidential will start, like, Wednesday.
Right. I'm already seeing Trump 2020 posts, so...
Have you seen the meme that's going around that has, like, prayer hands, and it says, "Don't let libertarians ruin Christmas, vote GOP"?
No. Oh, good Lord.
So, I think it's so ironic, and our libertarian friends who listen to this will appreciate it because I read what they say, but I think it was James Camp who even said, libertarians are either irrelevant like you say they are and have no influence on our elections, or they ruin every election. So which is it? Because those are very stark opposite outcomes. But I just think it's so stupid to put something like that out because if there is a runoff, you're going to need libertarians to turn out. And they are either going to turn out for Republicans or Democrats. And if you're the one saying that they ruined Thanksgiving because they voted for their values, well, good luck trying to get them to turn out for you.
I actually take the opposite view of that. And that is, if you hate me, it means I'm relevant. You don't... If I'm such a loser, you ignore me. So the fact that we're getting some hate means at least we're doing something right. And I say we. I know I'm a Republican. We'll get into that later about why the Republicans and the Libertarians and Democrats will hate me later. But the fact that we're getting any sort of press on that is progress of a certain degree.
Right.
I have to disclose a correction. What is it supposed to be on, page 8? It was not Lindsay Lohan, as I stated last week in Blackface. It was actually Julianne Hough, and it was in 2013, and she went as Crazy Eyes, and as far as I'm concerned, she can do no wrong anyway.
I really wish that you would have said that in between transitioning topics, just so it would have been the equivalent of page 8. I think you failed us all, but that's okay.
I'm accustomed to failing women.
Mm-hmm.
Dave's surrounded by disappointed women.
Oh, one other thing from this week that is totally non-relevant to any other topic. Matt, my wife was held hostage this week at the bank. They had an 18-inch corn snake make its way into the foyer, and nobody had the courage to chase this thing out.
I don't think it's funny.
That's hilarious.
She could have died.
She hired some dude that's got python arms, and he's like, She called the maintenance people, and they're like, kill it.
Well, that's it. We are talking about the same woman who begged you to discharge a firearm inside your house for a similar thing.
Precisely, yeah. She called me and sent me a text of the picture of this. I mean, this is a little tiny corn snake, and it's getting to be cool outside. The damn thing's just looking to be warm. And, of course, when this happened, it was right before Halloween. So the customer walking through thought it was a prop until it moved.
Oh, that's awesome. No, Jessica's a hard no.
I I mean,
And look,
I'm just not gonna judge because I've had critters and things in my home, and I understand the fear.
Look, I'm not Steve Irwin, like, crikey, look at this beauty, and jump on top of it or anything, but I'm like, I'm probably not going to beat to death the corn snake that's 1.5 feet long.
When I first moved into Brooklet, which was the first house I lived in South Georgia, I was getting out of the shower, and a roach the size of my fist, I swear to goodness, ran across the floor. And I had nothing, like no equipment or tools to handle it. So, why are you laughing?
You didn't have a shoe?
No tools. She had no tools to deal with a palmetto bug.
It was not a palmetto bug. And so I ripped the shower curtain rod off the wall and beat the bug with it. I'm not even kidding you. Like, the dogs were freaking out. I was sweating. I was mortified. It was the most intense. It was.
So you're standing there dripping wet.
Yeah, I was going to say, wet, probably
hold-
naked by the time she gets done swinging the shower curtain, because I'm sure the towel flew.
Holding a weapon as if she's Russell Crowe in Gladiator, yelling, "Are you not entertained?"
Have you ever tried to beat a roach with the end of a shower curtain rod? Like, it's really not. It takes some skill, and you should be more impressed than humored by my skill, because it had not only the clear curtain but also like the fancy curtain on the outside of it, and I just yanked it. I was like, it was do or die. I had no choice. If I let that thing get away, I would never be able to fall asleep. So,
please, if there's a listener out there who's a cartoon artist, please draw this, because it'll get 150,000 views on YouTube. The two dogs scared in the corner while a blonde girl is beating a roach with a stick.
it was more like, the spear movement. Like
as if the listeners can see you pantomiming the spear into the camera for us.
Whatever, man. You're such a hater. I survived. I'm a survivor.
There I was, man.
Right. Nah, man, we get those. They like to hang out at my house. They like to hang out in the firewood pile, and every now and then they'll scurry through the door when you open it at night. And my wife, she's like you. She loses her mind. She's got a cousin who's even worse. I've had to, at various times in the middle of the night, drive across the county to their house to go kill a bug because her husband worked nights. I don't know. I'm like, pick up a damn shoe, kill it.
I'm a faithful person too, and I just don't understand why they're on the earth. I don't know what their purpose is. I mean, sheer terror. And it's to the point now where if I grab the Raid can, Stella goes and sits in her kennel because she knows I'm going to start screaming. So she's just trained. But
look, I was in a barracks so bad and so old, World War II barracks in Fort Bragg at one point, that I would take a bottle of rubbing alcohol, put it on the shower floor, and light it on fire before I went in to take a shower because the roaches were so bad.
I would die. I would flatline.
So, one of the few things that I remember about living in New Mexico, we lived in Las Cruces, and those roach bugs, and I think we should probably clarify that we're not talking about cockroaches, which are the little German things that like infest your house when they're nasty. It's those other big ass dark brown ones, but the damn they were everywhere out there. And, like, the saying was that you would turn on the lights and the floor would move. But we lived in Las Cruces, I may have just said that. And every house around there, because it's right outside of the White Sands missile testing range, had bomb shelters. And those bomb shelters were slapped full of those bugs. So, you probably don't ever want to move to New Mexico.
I mean, I've been there. I'm aware of what kind of rodents in attack.
Well, Matt, I did not fall far from the tree. We were in New Mexico visiting family, our friends, and we found a tarantula in the basement. And it was kind of cool. We caught it and all that stuff and threw it outside. So we're going back upstairs, and my father's walking behind our family friend, who was a woman. So he starts crawling his fingers up her back.
What a jerk.
I've never seen a middle-aged woman move that fast. I'm surprised there wasn't a brown trail in the stairs.
All right.
Despite concerns about politics, Generation Z, and I'm going to put air quotes around adults who are 18 to 21 years old, are less likely or least likely to vote in the 2018 midterm elections, a report found.
But
go ahead.
But they're least likely to vote, but they tell everyone that they're the most stressed, and they poll higher at a higher stress level than people in different age demographics and other generations. So you're super stressed about things that you don't think you can control, which is one, stupid, and two, you can control them, so vote. Unless you're socialist, then stay home. But this doesn't even make any sense. Like, you're this stressed out about issues, but you're not gonna vote.
Matt, is this anything new from Rock the Vote when you and I were 18?
I think it's a little different, and I think I legitimately think part of the stress with it is, like, they're not sure what news they can trust.
You think that's what it is?
I do. I was listening to a podcast earlier this morning, and it dealt with this very subject. Some of the younger millennials and then the Generation Z that they're very stressed about it, but they didn't know which news sources they could trust, and so many of them opted to go to the extremes, and then make an assumption that the truth was in the middle, which is probably not a bad way to handle that. But I found it very interesting that they felt that the news cycle and where they were getting their news was a thing to them, and that I think one of the more interesting things was that it was saying that they tend to, after they've ruled out the extremes, they seek out people who are a little older than them, like me and Dave, and trust our judgment on it, which could not be stupid, depending on
which one of us they come to.
Right.
I mean, so I get what you're saying about them not knowing which news sources to trust. I think that's an issue that spans across all generations right now. And then there was a report that came out that said older people have a harder time deciphering what is real and what is fake. But this article was put out by PR Newswire, but it's from the American Psychological Association, and they have this graphic that shows how Generation Z is stressed over issues that are in the national news and how adults overall are. And for mass shootings, they're at 75% versus 62% for the rest of the population, which is odd that they feel like they're, what does stressed mean? I guess that's kind of broad. Like, are they running around worried that they're going to be victim of a mass shooting, or are they just triggered by the idea of a mass shooting. I don't know. But,
so to speak.
Right. But, yeah, that was probably a bad choice of words. But, I mean.
Right.
Triggered in the sense that, like, the word just stresses them out hearing mass shootings. I don't really understand that. But the rise in suicide rates, they're at 62%, where everyone else is at 44%. They're 7% higher on global warming, which who is stressed about global warming? Like, who is sitting around thinking about it? I don't know. But and then 12% more stressed about immigration and migrant families, and then 14% more stressed about widespread sexual harassment and assault reports.
I'm going to give you the most reasonable thing that's been told on this podcast probably ever. The longer you live, the more perspective you have. Everything comes back around. So when you are really, really stressed about global warming, the older you are, the more you remember that in the 70s, there was a couple called Paul and Ann Ehrlich who were really, really stressed about global cooling, and we were all going to die in an ice age. And when you extrapolate that out, the longer you're on this earth, you realize that everything has ebbs and flows. Not everything is worth jumping off a cliff. The young tend to put things, a tempest in a teacup. So it doesn't shock me that people that have no world experience get really stressed about things they have no world experience about.
You know, when I think about it from, like, when I was that age, the things that dominated the news, you know, God.
Kennedy being shot?
No. No, it was all, you know, that was about the time that crack started, like, it was a real thing, you know, and there was all this stuff going around that, you know, you try crack one time and you're instantly addicted, or it may kill you right then. AIDS was also a big thing. Like, I remember, you know, coming up through my last years of middle school, my first years of high school, like, being more afraid that I would catch AIDS than knock some girl up.
From a swimming pool or...
Yeah. Or using a public toilet, or, you know, any number of stupid things. So I guess it may just have to do with what dominates the news at the time. And now, you know, news travels so much faster than it did when we were kids.
It does. And look, I was the first generation with Rock the Vote and Kurt Loder on MTV, and this liberal media trying to seize upon. You know, I'm not the first, because you know who's the first was Walter Cronkite, who's doing it with the hippies in the 60s and the Tet Offensive. The media has been trying to seize upon the youth movement for a century now. And the fact is, as youth grow up, they mature. And as they mature, their opinions mature, and they move on from, oh my God, we're all going to die in a nuclear holocaust. We're all going to die from global cooling or global warming, to, you know what, I need to feed my kids.
Right. You know, I guess as a personal thing, I'm probably pretty cool with the fact that they don't want to vote in the election, because 18-year-old kids are dumbasses, and I'm not sure I want them at the helm.
Well, and did you guys click through all of these graphics? A lot of them I found really interesting. Like, I mean, it kind of goes with what Dave was saying about the mental health of Generation Z is at 45%, whereas Boomers is at 70% and older adults is at 74%. I don't know if that's like self-declared, like if because if it is, I can see why someone's saying like, oh, my life is crashing around me, everything's terrible. Whereas like a psychologist would be like, no, you're just a drama queen.
It says they are least likely to say their mental health is excellent or very good.
Right. So drama queens.
Right. Well, think about God, the first time your significant other broke up with you, it's the end of the world. They don't like you anymore.
Right.
I mean, you can tie the emotional side of this to so many things that go along with maturing. After a while, it comes with growing up. I mean, I know it's the idea that if you're not a liberal at 20, you don't have a heart. If you're not a conservative at 40, you don't have a brain. I never had a heart. I was never really, that liberally minded. One of my first high school costumes for Halloween was me dressed up as a homeless person with a sign that says "Small business owner under the Clinton health plan." So that really goes to show that the same themes go on and on and on and on. And the longer you ride this rock, you figure out that stuff is just not going to change that much. Your life's not going to be that bad. If Stacey Abrams wins, I'm not going to go throw myself out of the window. It's going to be okay.
Well, and that's kind of what I was getting at when I was saying, like, drama queen. Not that mental health is something to just blow off, but as society has softened, like, these things don't, on a day-to-day basis, these things are not impacting people's lives, yet they're willing to say that their mental health is not as sound because of these issues, like, it's sad and it's devastating to see the aftermath of a mass shooting, but I wasn't involved in that shooting, so while I can be sympathetic and empathetic for all the people affected, like, my life isn't any different. I'm not going to be devastated for my own life. I'm going to be devastated for others. And I don't know. I really struggle with the almost like overuse of mental health when it comes to political issues. Like, I feel like people make a choice to allow it to affect their mental health the way that it does.
The fact is, and we've discussed that on the show many times, people get so wrapped around national politics in which they have no voice. And I know I'm being facetious about the no voice, but you have one congressman who may or may not return your phone calls, and you have a senator who may or may not return your phone calls. And you have no real control over national politics. But people won't lift a single finger to handle what's happening in their own county. Right. People won't get involved in what's going on down the street. It is so much easier to shake your fist in the air and go, hey, the president did this, or Congress did this, or whoever else. And we want to scream at the TV till we're blue in the face and no one can hear you. But you know what? That county commissioner would love to hear from you. He's over at Publix, and he's shopping with his family. And you stop him and say, hey, I have this concern with our community. He's going to listen to you.
Right.
Or
take him to task in the produce section.
Absolutely.
They love it.
I ran into my post commissioner today picking up takeout for dinner. Those people are accessible to you, but the majority of people in this country, and I will venture to say, without being a complete a-hole, this section of the population we're talking about, the Gen Z people, have no damn clue who the person who is closest to them, that has the most effect in their life, is, what they look like, or what their stances are.
Right. I would agree with that.
And I successfully sucked the air out of the room on that subject, too. Well, Trump.
Y'all should see Jessica just kind of staring at the camera and blinking.
I mean, like, I'm all right with you stealing the show on a topic, but, like, don't leave us with literally nothing to say, because, like, I mean, you do you, Kelly Clarkson, but, like, you gotta leave room for us to say something.
It's the Dave Roberts show.
Right.
Oh, God, that would be awful. I'm sorry. I want to apologize to you and the starving pygmies of New Guinea.
Oh.
Sorry, I get on a soapbox. This is why my family doesn't listen to the show, because they've heard it all.
Right. My wife's the same way. She's like, whatever.
So anyway, President Trump is issuing an executive order to end birthright citizenship. Jessica, so I don't suck the air out of the subject, I thought there was an amendment that covered this.
Oh, I don't have an opinion on this. You can just go ahead and run with it. This is something that, like, I feel like I'm just kind of sitting back and watching unfold. We don't even know what the executive order looks like yet, so I'm not willing to, like, throw myself in one direction or another. But it directly relates to the 14th Amendment, which is, what was put in place to give black people citizenship and to make them whole under the law. And so, of course, there's like an immediate outrage about that, and the language says that, any person born in this country subject to the jurisdiction, which is what is now causing all of the controversy over what subject to jurisdiction means. And some of the comments that I've read from people are a little bit more thought-provoking than just being, like, outraged in one direction or the other. Someone said, if he does this, he'll take a few hits and then force the courts to make a more concrete decision. Because I think one of the most recent decisions dates back to, like, the 1800s from the Supreme Court. So that's a valid point that, he could force the courts to decide. I just wish that it wasn't going to happen via executive order. I'm not a fan of executive orders at all. Like, I understand that they are within the scope of the presidency, but I'm not a fan of them. And I was super critical of Obama and super critical of George Bush, and I've been critical of Trump. And so, I'm trying to be consistent in that I'm not a fan of how this is probably going to happen.
Well, let me flow something out to you, Jessica. Could this be the straw that breaks the camel's back and causes Congress to pull back their legislative powers from the executive branch?
I mean, I think, honestly, if this was happening before, well before the election, the executive order was going to be something that Congress persons would have to answer to on the trail. I think that might be more of something that we might see. But I feel like if the midterm elections go the way of the Republicans, then why would they even bother? They'll just take a little heat, and by the time the next election rolls around, they won't have to talk about it anymore. Obviously, if Democrats take the House, then I think for 100% we'll see this, and then you'll see Congress rein in the power. But
now, Matt, the 14th Amendment falls under my definition of legislation passed in time of crisis, much like the Patriot Act.
What? You need to go back and elaborate on that.
All right, it was part of Reconstruction. We're coming out of the Civil War. The repatriation of the former slaves absolutely needed to be done. It doesn't mean that particular piece of legislation was well written. That being said, much like we say about our amendments to the Georgia Constitution, you don't get to take a red pen to it 100 years later and go, well, we didn't mean this, even though those are the words that we wrote.
So you think that the 14th Amendment was too loosely written? Is that what your angle is here?
My angle? No, it's not necessarily my angle, but it is. Yes, it was written in a time of high stress. Now, remember what just happened. After we killed millions of Americans and we just lost our president,
Lincoln.
Yeah. I mean, I know you're Team Booth.
Speaking of that, I do have a picture of me posing in the house where Lincoln died, where I'm doing a Vanna White in front of it.
Oh, good Lord.
You're going to have to post that picture now.
You know how hard it is to get me to say something like that? I mean, you could say the most offensive things in the world to me, and I'll just roll with it. Your Vanna White next to the bed that Lincoln died in.
I mean, I'm sad he died. I don't wish anyone to die, but I mean,
Well, I'm not sad he died. It was, he died 100-something years ago. I mean, I'm over it.
oh Lord.
Oh, good Lord. Where we go? Anyway, so the legislators that wrote that amendment were angry. They were hurt. And it was part of a package to punish the South. Now, whatever you think of that, that's what was happening. So, was it the best wording? I don't think so. I don't think it was. And I don't think it was ever intended to mean that anyone who sticks one dry foot onto American soil and pops out a kid, that kid is an American citizen. Now, if that's what we want the definition to mean, we need to go forward and define that. And if that's not what we mean, we can go forward and define that too. But the definitions in the 14th Amendment are way too loose. The narrow intent, when we talk about framers' intent, the narrow intent was to keep the former Confederate states from denying citizenship to former slaves under the basis that they were property the day before. And that's what the whole idea of the 14th Amendment was and why it was part of Reconstruction. And we will have to put a picture that I just saw of Jessica and her Vanna White impersonation in front of the house that Lincoln died in.
I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I'm inclined to agree, but I think when I look at these types of things, like, let's just say I'm 100% like all Paulding County GOP on this thing, and I'm behind Trump, like supporting whatever he wants to do, right? I don't support taking an executive order to something that, even if it can be handled by executive order, should probably be handled constitutionally or in the courts. I mean, what precedent is that setting for all of the other amendments?
No, you're absolutely right.
Right.
We're talking about things that are mutually exclusive at that point, which is that what the 14th Amendment meant, which is on one side, and does the executive branch have the right to define a constitutional amendment, which I'm opposed to also. It's not his role. Now, Matt, because you're our conspiracy guy.
No, man, I run from conspiracy theories.
Well, I was more making reference to the special session that's coming up and
Right.
your idea on that one. Trump is not dumb. You can agree with him. You can disagree with him. He's not dumb.
Right.
He is a master at sleight of hand. So as soon as he gets us talking about the 14th Amendment, what else is coming out?
Right.
That was a question, Matthew. What else is
Yeah,
coming out?
I don't know. I left my crystal ball, man.
You know, one thing that I think Trump has the ability to do that Obama had the ability to do, but not to this scale, is when he decides he's going to do something and he mentions it, that is all America talks about. He sets the conversation points, and I said obnoxious because I don't like being told what to talk about. Like, this is distracting from what's happening here in Georgia. But he just has this power. I mean, social media has been filled with constitutional scholars all of a sudden who are well versed on what should or should not and what can and cannot happen, whilst not knowing what it's actually going to say or do.
Right.
That's amazing to me.
Oh, no, he is a master of social media. He has changed the game, the political game. Absolutely has changed the political game. And again, you can like Trump, you can dislike Trump, but he has changed the political game. and you have to tip your hat. And again, this is a guy who's a psychological operator, somebody who analyzed propaganda for a living. You have to tip your hat to somebody who can wake up at 3 a.m, tweet something, go to sleep with just some doo-doo eating grin, knowing that he just changed the news cycle at 9 o'clock the following morning.
Right.
Yep. I think he does that in order to capture everyone's attention while he does something else. You know,
absolutely.
Like, oh, here, go over here, look at this. I'm gonna go do this shit.
Well, and to his credit, the stuff that he has done from a economic standpoint and everything else has been great, has been good. We've seen upticks, and we've seen good things from the things that he's done. We just have, he goes out and he says, this is why Kanye loves him. I gotta be why Kanye loves him. He says the most outlandish stuff out in left field, and we all go look at it, and we all look like a dog who is trying to understand Shakespeare. Kind of turn your head to the side, go, and he's over there fixing stuff, and we're like, well, that's pretty cool. It is absolutely amazing. He's Penn and Teller with his sleight of hand. As we're over here looking at this tweet and trying to analyze what he meant at 3 o'clock in the morning. Meanwhile, he's fixing stuff. And I know all my libertarian friends are like, their veins are popping out in their foreheads and stuff like that. And my liberal friends have already stroked out. But the stuff that he does not match up with the stuff that he says in a good way. He talks. Never mind. I'm gonna drop that. I was gonna make a really, really, really bad thing, and we wouldn't have any more listeners. Never mind. I'm sorry. This is a great time to remind everyone that these are our opinions and not necessarily those of All on Georgia or any sane and rational person.
Are you saying we're not sane and rational?
Absolutely.
Just checking.
Well, it's not that we're not sane. It's that we're the 3 sane people in a very insane world. Which is how every sociopath thinks.
Right.
We thought it would be fun to get into predictions as the election's tomorrow on our statewide races. So we're going to start off with the governor's race. And Jessica, I'd like to know who you think is going to win and what are the margins?
I mean, I'm not a pollster, man. Come on. I honestly, the only thing that is surprising to me is that no one is polling over 50% right now. Or even close. Like, they're both hovering at 47 and 48, Abrams and Kemp. And then with Ted Metz coming in at 2%. So, if he holds at 2%, there'll be a runoff. And I'm not sure that I don't recall when they've overpolled libertarians, like overstated what they think the libertarian outcome will be. So, if it holds steady to the polls that we've seen across all of these races and over the last 3 or 4 months, I think we could see a runoff in the governor's race. I don't think there will be a runoff in any other race, though.
Well, that is depressing. Matthew.
I think Kemp's going to take it at 52% right out of the gate.
That's a big margin.
Yeah, I know. Here's the thing: is I just think that the GOP, I just think that they're gonna get out their vote. I think they're legitimately afraid.
I'm going to go 53 54 Kemp, and I'll tell you why. The more Hollywood pushes, the more they send out Will Ferrell, the more they push, the more you get out the spit cup Americans, the pickup truck driving, the guys that Kemp went after in the primary, and you charge them up. Because the more that you push these guys in a corner, the more they come out fighting. The more they see some Hollywood liberal out from California tell me how to vote coming out there, I think there's a counter effect. I think that every door that Will Ferrell and the Hollywood folks knock on, they get two people from the conservative side to come out and reject this idea that they should tell us how to run our state.
I agree with you. The Republican outrage is organic, and I think that you're going to see record turnout. But I've seen it in rural Georgia. I've seen it in election years that weren't as, in quote, as important as this. And there's a real voter fraud problem when it comes to turnout in terms of paying people to show up at the polls, busing them to the polls, getting them to fill out absentee ballots that they signed but they didn't really fill out. That is a real thing, and it goes across partisan divides, but it is primarily a Democrat thing, especially in underserved and underprivileged communities. And I think that that's the only reason that I think the race is going to be a lot closer, because the Democrats were well-equipped, well-prepared, well-funded, and they were ready to beat the system however they needed to.
Well, Jessica, this is a question aimed at you because of some of the stuff that you've shown on your Facebook page. What do you think the Mets effect is? You kind of showed somebody who said Mets won the debate, therefore I voted for Kemp. Is there a huge libertarian effect on this race?
I mean, I think that there's a little bit of momentum right now, which I think is frustrating even for people who support Ted Metz, because, you know, we're right now a day from the election, but, you know, over the last several weeks, it really, his surge started when he appeared on the Atlanta Press Club debate. And while he fought to get there, and he did right to get there, and it's monumental and great, his surge should have started back at least in the summer, if not last winter. And the claims that he was on the ballot before anyone else are great, but if no one knows who you are, and, you know, he was battling cancer and he's had all kinds of problems, but that doesn't take away from the fact that his name is not a household name. And it can be done. I mean, look at what's happening in New York. The governor's race in New York with the Libertarian is outstanding. He's well-funded. He's well-backed. He's a household name. He's getting national attention, and it's not just in the last few weeks of the election.
And I really wanted to cover that New York race. We just didn't get a chance in our podcasts. That race is a cookie cutter of what every libertarian race, statewide race, should be across this country. He comes to the table with real ideas, not. And don't get me wrong, I like Ted Metz. I do. I mean, I voted Kemp. I've already early voted. I'm going to be out of town on election day. This guy comes with out of the box ideas, and one of them, and I don't want. I'm sorry. I know I get off on hog trails. Is to name bridges and pieces of road after businesses, sort of like Mercedes-Benz Stadium. These companies will spend billions naming a Falcon Stadium after them that gets mentioned 8 times a year, versus Dr. Cool overpass that gets mentioned every day between 3 and 7 o'clock because someone has an accident on there. You know, those are ideas for funding our government that are new, fresh, they're libertarian, that really energize the party.
Does that company get to maintain those roads too?
Well, that's the idea, is they pay a maintenance, just like Mercedes-Benz pays for the Falcon Stadium. is they have so much that they're due every year, whatever the contract is for however many billions of dollars,
Right.
and that money goes to maintain that building. Now, when you talk about MBS, Arthur already came out of pocket for that, and the city and the state, and they still get a multi-billion-dollar contract to go and throw a Flava Flav necklace emblem on the outside of it. Matt, are you okay?
It was just funny.
But that really, when I say stuff like, libertarians, this is why we can't have nice things. The Jessica, help me out. What's his name in New York? I'm not looking it up right now.
I don't remember. I just know he's a libertarian in New York who's blowing it out of the water.
And I'm an asshole.
He's a household name up there, but not a household name in mine. I mean, I don't know. I don't have to vote for him.
Well, no, and that's the thing is he comes with fresh ideas and real solutions when they roll the statist dice over, what do you want to live in Somalia? Who's going to pay for the roads? And he's like, yeah, I'll tell you who's going to pay for the roads. Mercedes-Benz is going to pay for the roads. Verizon is going to pay for the roads. This company's going to pay for the roads. And he comes with real answers. And everybody else who's been on the sidelines with the libertarian movements be like, yes, that's who we've been asking for.
Larry Sharp.
So that's really, like I said, I like Metz. I like his answers. He seems like a very nice guy. Obviously, Jessica, you know better than I do because you've actually breathed the same oxygen that he has. But, the guy that we're all looking for is the guy who holds the sword over his head that says, follow me. I'm going to charge and we're going to beat back statism.
And you have to have a big megaphone. I mean, you have to hunt down every opportunity to get your message out there. And, libertarians, that's their biggest criticism in all states, but especially in Georgia. You got to be loud. If you're the candidate of choice, Doug Craig had spoken about running for governor and then his business just started booming. But he's a libertarian voice all the time, 24/7, around the clock, every day of the year. People know who he is, and people in other political parties know that he's a player. It doesn't mean he's a household name, but, it would have been a little bit of a boost, I think. And you've got to start way early when you're the underdog.
Well, look, here's the Gary Johnson problem. I'm Gary Johnson. What about Aleppo? Well, what do you mean? Instead of saying, in what state do you find Aleppo? Oh, it's not the United States? I don't care. Good Lord. Gary Johnson's a very nice guy, but he is the substitute teacher of politicians.
Is he the Paulette Rakestraw, show up in your gym shorts and sweatshirt?
I have never. His hair always looks good, though.
He's running. He's running for something out in New Mexico. I think he's running for governor again.
Of course he is. No, look, he's a very nice guy. I've seen him on lots of programs. He's a little dopey, so to speak. It's time to move past him to a out front, tip of the spear, let's defeat statism sort of libertarian that we're not getting. We're getting these passive guys that don't have any plans and don't have any real affirmative movement towards ending statism besides, hey, legalize dope.
Right. No, I think you got to get past the guys who, I don't know, I like every libertarian candidate I've ever spoken with has said they care more about spreading a message than they do about winning. And I don't know, man. Win the damn thing. You'll spread the message that way.
So I totally agree with that for the office of the governor, because it is a perfect platform to talk about how the office is too powerful, what the proper role of government is, the division of power, all of that. But when you start making your way down the ballot and you're running for Secretary of State and Public Service Commissioner and Agriculture Commissioner, which they should be running for, and all these others, and insurance commissioners, for the love of God, be in it to win it.
Right.
Fight for it. Don't get more than 5%. Like, come on and try. Come on.
Look, nobody wants a moral victory. This is not T-ball.
Right.
You know, when the Falcons were in the Super Bowl, I did not leave that night. I didn't go to bed that night thinking, gee, it sure was nice to make it to the game. Because when we hit halftime, I was like, oh my God, we could win this. And that's the feeling that libertarians need is, oh my God, this is within reach. We can win this. We can change the paradigm here. We can change statism. And that means when you talk about down the ballot, that means down on the county side running for school board.
Right? I don't know. Maybe I'll run for governor in 2022.
You could
You
win
won't get my vote.
dog catcher.
Do what?
All right, so
We're super supportive of our colleagues on this show. Together, in unison, Dave and I put Matt down and shot holes in his platform. But
well, what do we
moving on.
what do we think of the lieutenant governor's race?
I mean,
Matt?
Jeff.
Go ahead, Jessica. Jessica had something to say about that.
Mansplain this for us, Matt.
I think I'm going to vote for Sarah Examico.
That's not the question.
Man,
The question
I know
is-
that. I kind of hope she wins, but I don't think she's gonna.
I don't think she's going to win either. I think Jeff Duncan's going to wipe the floor with her. I think it will probably be the biggest distinction in race. Probably, I'd be surprised if it wasn't 55-45.
You know, I think Duncan is going to win without having to take a serious interview, without having to expose himself to ridicule, and running his commercials on he and his boys getting ready for school. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Amico. I mean, I didn't like her answers on some of the stuff, but to Jessica's point on, you know, when she was doing the interviews, is she stands by her points. And she was a huge turnoff with the pound me too stuff, and making the accusations to Kemp, who she's not even running against. So I don't know. And just predicting, I figure that Duncan's going to win.
Yeah, you're right.
Do we have any
But
predictions?
Secretary of State, I mean, that could be something that we see an upset.
Oh, absolutely, we could. What do you think?
I mean, I think Barrow's going to fare better than any Democrat on the ballot just because he's well known. His constituent services are awesome. Raffensperger is not a good communicator, doesn't really have a platform. And then you have Smythe Duval from the Libertarian Party, who has really has a strong message that's Googleable, but he hasn't really been present or seen a lot of places. But I think just by default, like, you know, there's a third option and there'll be some pull. So, I mean, maybe there'll be a runoff, but I think at a minimum, I think Barrow, after Abrams, obviously, will perform better than any Democrat on the ballot.
Matt, do you think Raffensperger is going to buy the general like he did the primary?
Absolutely, I do. Man, for no other reason than name recognition.
Oh, God, that's awful. I mean, look, I really, really, really liked Barrow's last commercial. And this is from a guy who you know, enjoys that sort of stuff because I'm sick. But the way he did I'm a Democrat, but I won't bite you. Really, really, really well done. It is Georgia to a T. I mean, it's Georgia to a sweet tea. It's
Oh my
very.
God. Can we just turn off the show? These jokes are getting worse as we go. Georgia to a sweet tea. Oh my.
Oh, good Lord. So, but I think that Raffensperger probably will pull it just because of the straight ballot voting, not because anything has to do with any policy with him personally or anybody knowing who the hell he is besides a blue and green sign on the side of the road. There's nothing substantive to it. I think he'll win.
You go outside the city and all of his signs are just happen to be at gas stations that aren't locally owned. All of them.
Well, he was the first sign that we saw out in Paulding County go up.
Yep.
Like I was going to announce a friend for running for office. I'm like, who the hell is this guy? Is it
Right.
wasn't he on Cheers? All right, real quick, let's go through 1 through 5. Matt, number 1. Pass or fail?
Number 1,
Pass.
what? Oh, pass. That one's going to pass 80%.
Jessica.
It's going to pass. I'm not going to say 80%, but it's going to pass.
Number 2.
Pass.
Matt.
Let's see, which one is that? That's the business court, right?
Yes.
That's going to fail. I think instinctively people are going to go, nah, we don't need that much government.
Yeah, but the language is to increase efficiency and save money. Like, that's a hard language to overcome.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
people, they're not going to read it.
I think it passes, and I think it passes a 51 or 52. I think the safe money will get enough people to click it.
Maybe.
Number 3.
Pass.
Is that the Forestry Service one?
Yeah. the
No,
timber
that's going to
taxation.
fail. That is going to fail so hard because people are going to be like, what the hell? No.
They vote yes when they don't know. They are traitors. They vote yes when they don't understand.
I'm going to go no on this one just because this is more out of praying than anything else that someone's going to read that. Because that's the amendment that it took me 15 minutes to read.
Yeah, the
And
one giant run-on sentence.
that Matt had to chime in and go, no, Dave can read English. That wasn't written in any form of English, so I hope. Number 4, Jessica.
God willing, it will fail. And honestly, I truly believe that if there's any amendment that can fail, it's this one. Because the kind of opposition I've seen to it across the board and from all corners of the state seems to mimic the Opportunity School District one, which failed back in 2016. Now the legislature came back and just jammed it through as a law, but this is already law, so if that happens, it's really not a big deal. But I feel strongly that people understand the ramifications of this one the most. And even people who aren't political, I see, have been speaking out against it, which just really surprises me. And so I'm cautiously optimistic that this Marsy's Law garbage will fail. Also, just for those of you that didn't catch the article, the sponsor who's been pushing this in millions across the country was arrested for drug trafficking in Vegas. And he's a billionaire who got arrested for drug trafficking. So if that tells you anything.
No, that's the best thing I found about the law. Is there's a billionaire who's hanging out in Vegas doing drugs. At least that's cool. Matt, your prediction?
It's going to pass.
God, you know what? I'm Jessica, I'm with you 150% on this thing. I want it to fail. There's just no way. There's just between Kelsey Grammer and and I feel the poor disfigured woman who's on TV. There are too many people who are going to have their hearts in their sleeves instead of the brains in their heads. They'll go in there and say, yeah, they're going to see victim and vote for it.
Yeah, they're going to get one sentence in and be like, well, if someone, I would want to know if the guy that robbed me, I would want to know what happens if he's
Right.
moving. And that's it. That's the end of the thought process for it.
All right. Number 5.
Pass. It's the education taxation one. People will do anything for freaking education.
Matt, it's for the children. Pass or fail?
That's going to fail.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with pass on this one. I think that one goes, and I think it goes big numbers. I think it's 60 because again, it's one of those things that's written so convolutedly that people are gonna get lost on it and go, you know what? I like kids. We'll vote yes.
That's going to fail. they're going to look at that and be like, we don't need more taxes.
From your lips to God's ears.
Do you know how many times a constitutional amendment has failed?
No.
Me either, but I bet it's not a lot.
Do you know what it says in the Bible about not forgiving folks? It's against
Nope.
it. So that's a line from Kingpin. Matt, closing thoughts. Vote for Amendment 1.
Yeah, vote for Amendment 1. Get out and vote, man. Unless you're not a property owner or you don't pay taxes or you're on welfare. If
Or you're a woman.
you're doing that, stay home.
Good Lord, Matt. Jessica?
I mean, just please give Georgia some hope and vote no on something. Just pick one.
No,
Just
no,
pick
no,
something.
don't pick one.
Pick 1 or 4 or 2 or 3 or 5. Just vote no. Like, for once, just try to limit the size and scope of government. Just give it a whirl. If you hate it, we can expand it again next time. If you hate the freedom, like, we'll take it away again. Don't worry.
I would encourage people to think critically. Through one of my psychological
Okay, the
operations.
jokes are enough, okay? Enough with the jokes.
If something comes across on social media that mimics your thought exactly, examine the source. Right. And there's an example of Tehran taking a picture of Tom Hanks, who's wearing a soccer jersey, and putting a bunch of different shirts on him and putting it on a social justice warrior site on Facebook and Instagram, and everybody getting like 150,000 likes that he was never involved in. And this came from Tehran. You're being played with. Look at stuff critically. You know, these friends you went to high school with and all that stuff that keep forwarding stuff. Look at it before you hit forward, share, or whatever else you're doing. Good Lord. Use your head for more than a damn hat rack.
That's it.
And that concludes our after-school special.
Happy election day.
Vote or don't.